Actually, let's go hunt Bigfoot. Tonight is a fascinating topic for me. Yeah, it's been a learning curve for me over the past, I'd say, about a year or so on the subject of the famous North American hominid. Hominid? I'm pretty sure it's hominid. There's two very different. There's two very different distinctions with that word. It's weird. So I don't remember all the nuance of it right now, but when I do, guaranteed, it's coming out on the channel. So if you're enjoying the content from us so far, if you enjoy the topic of the Bible version conspiracy, seeking to expose the conspiracy behind the modern Bible translation controversy, and exploring the King James Bible supernatural character and oft criticized words, passages, phrases, what have you. If you enjoy all that kind of stuff, and you believe that there is a conspiracy behind the modern Bible translation controversy, which is seeking to undermine our civilization and our faith at this very moment, please consider subscribing. Even if you like conspiracy theories in general, this is a topic that is not often talked about. So hang out for a while. See what you think. One of the big things is our channel trailer where we talk about the actual exposing of this conspiracy very briefly. It's a very brief exposure, and then it just kind of goes underground again in the book called The New Order of Barbarians. It's crazy, crazy stuff. So we're not going to talk about that tonight, though. We're talking about Bigfoot, one of the most famous cryptids or hidden animals in the entire world. In America mostly, because it's just called Bigfoot here. In Asia, it might be called a Yeti or an Alma, depending on where you live. It might be called a man of the woods, a Sasquatch in Canada, more than likely. Woodwoos. There's all sorts of different terms. Like woodwoos, I believe, is in Britain. Every place has their own name for these things. What's that one? It's like orang something. I forget what it is, but if I remember correctly, it's down like in Indonesia. There's just the forest people in India. There's all sorts and all kinds all over the place. So tonight we're going to talk about them because there's some people recently that have been coming out and putting forward the idea that Bigfoot is in the Bible. And I was like, what? Bigfoot's in the Bible? That's incredible. First place I heard this was from a lady named Robin McRae. I don't know if I can bring her picture up. I mentioned her briefly and showed a picture of her on the stream that we did where we talked about Bigfoot. Was it a stream? I think it was just a short video that we did. No, it might have been part of a stream. I'm not sure. I'll check sometime. Let's see. Robin McRae. Robin McRae, Bigfoot. Ah, yes. Okay. So let me Okay, so Daniel Jones might not be able to join us, but he will try, he says. That's okay by me. All right. We're going to open this in a new tab. So the first place that I heard about Robin McRae, well, the first place that I heard about Bigfoot possibly being in the Bible was from Robin McRae. And let me show you her picture real quick. We're going to share the screen, and we're going to share. Alrighty. There we go. Okay. So this is Robin McRae. And she has apparently a lot of connections, and that's this one right here. Not the blonde, the what do you brunette, I believe is the term. So the one with glasses in the tealish kind of green color. So that is Robin McRae. And she said that she's not that familiar with the Bible, but what she thinks she saw one time was the Bible talk about the hairy people. And I was just like, no, I mean, maybe the closest thing you could get to that is like, maybe there was some name of like some people in the Old Testament, maybe among the Canaanites that might have meant the hairy people, or maybe the descendants of Esau. Is that what we're talking about? That was the first place that I heard any kind of whispering of Bigfoot being in the Bible. And that was it for a while. Then start listening to a lot of Dave Paulides stuff. He's the guy that runs the Can-Am, as in like Canada and America, Can-Am Missing Project on YouTube. And he also has the, let's see, what is his North America Bigfoot Search, I believe, is the name of the group. Yeah, North America Bigfoot Search. That is their badge, and that is Dave right there. This is his book called Bigfoot, Wildmen, and Giants, which is, it looks like it's going to be fascinating. Problem, though, as a graphic artist, I have a real problem with this book because the articles are super duper fuzzy. Like, hang on. It's actually showing up even better on the screen than it is in person. It's like, it's hard to focus on it, on the text, because there's just like almost no contrast. It's like, it's pixely. Hopefully they get those images maybe a little bit smaller or something, or maybe they just decrease the format size of their book. It can help to sharpen up the lines a little bit to just not blow it up to so many, make the pixels so huge. But the information sounds fascinating. He went into a lot of that book in his class called Bigfoot 101, which is available on YouTube. He has a whole playlist of that. If you want to check that playlist out, I have a link for it. Right. I'll put it in the description too if I can. And I'm also hoping soon to do a Bigfoot page for our website. I already have a Bigfoot page for our other website, Card Carrying Christians, and that is right here. So if you go here, there's, the Glag Saga is amazing. Some swearing though, so maybe not for kids. A bunch of episodes from the confessionals. Dave Paulides, Bigfoot 101. It is a 30. Is that 30? I think that's 30. 30 episodes. They're about an hour a piece. and just absolutely crazy information. So before you start saying something like, "Oh, Bigfoot is a Gigantopithecus," we hear this all the time, especially from Christians who want to say that Bigfoot is real. So before you say it's a Gigantopithecus, wait and listen to all the information. There's a lot of what people call the woo factor, where, it's like supposed to have supernatural powers or whatever. I've listened to a lot of the evidence for that, and I would conclude that whatever people are seeing does seem to exhibit some kind of supernatural power and powers greater than animal. We'll get into that in a second. Oh boy, we're going to be opening up some worms tonight. Let me tell you, we're going to be opening up a fresh can of King James worms. I love canned worms. They're my favorite. All right, so in Dave Paulides' videos, he mentions how a common and popular Mormon explanation for the sightings of Bigfoot that were made out in Utah with their whole Latter-day Saints group. They said that, and quickly Cain became associated with everything bad, everything evil, everything demonic, everything else like this, everything opposed to the Mormon Church. And the basic story of how I don't think it's how that got associated with Cain. I think that it's more so trying to justify what they already thought. So the idea is, in Mormonism apparently, this doesn't seem to be an official Mormon doctrine. But what seems to be the case is that Bigfoot is supposed to be Cain somehow. So when Cain gets a mark put on him by God, this mark apparently is him being covered with hair and being absolutely enormous and just all your other typical Bigfoot type characteristics, It's really a weird doctrine. Don't blame me for it. I'm just the messenger. And a couple of places where this was actually put forward is the book called The Miracle of Forgiveness by Spencer W. Kimball, who was a leader in Mormonism. Like Bill Schneblin, I think, actually refers to Kimball several times in his talks and such. And this seems to be where the association begins. So he claims that he was riding around one day, and this is what we've talked about in a previous video, that he was riding around one day on his horse, and all of a sudden there's this man standing next to him that's covered with hair, and he's riding on his horse, and this guy's head standing there on the ground is about even with his shoulder. Crazy tall individual. So he's like, "Who the heck are you?" And this hairy person says, "I am a miserable wanderer in the earth, and I seek to destroy the souls of men," and stuff like this, because Cain was supposed to have been a wanderer. So this part about him just saying that he's a miserable wanderer in the earth is just like, oh my goodness, this is supposed to be Cain. Okay, so, all right. Let me break this down for you. That means Cain is 6,000 or so years old. Okay. Cain survived the flood. Somehow he survived the flood. He survived all these millennia. And he met Spencer W. Kimball riding there on his horse. Big coincidence. And of course, Spencer W. Kimball rebukes him in the name of the Lord or what have you, and this thing runs away. So many things wrong with that story. So I would trump that up to so much desire for a sermon illustration. Bill Schneebelen said that very often in Mormonism they will invent stories. They call them, what is it? They call them faith-building tales or something like this. And they will literally try to get you to believe a lie. That's kind of what it is. I mean, you make up a story, right? You make up a story to get somebody to believe in something that you feel is true. What? What is the connection? Why would you do that? Let's reinforce the truth with a lie. That's not a good idea. Because people find out that you lied when you told that story, then guess what they're going to think about the truth? It's a dumb idea. And I'm sorry to say it, but Baptists and King James only authors, and sometimes I think even modern version authors, do the same thing. And it's sad, and I don't like it. And you shouldn't either, by the way. And I promised you, I'm sorry, I'm already going back on my promise. I told you a few episodes ago that I wasn't going to tell you what to think. I mean, you don't have to hate lying. You don't have to despise made-up stories and stuff like this. You don't have to. Free country, right? Oh my goodness. So let's move on just a little bit. That's the Mormon explanation. Dave Paulides mentions the Mormon explanation with Cain. He mentions it. I don't see it a lot, especially since Cain is supposed to have been a fugitive and a vagabond, and then he goes and builds a city. That's one thing that I kind of have a hard time wrapping my head around. There was something I heard recently. I may have made a note about it, but I don't think I did. There is some Hebrew connection that, like, the name of the city was wandering or something. I don't remember exactly what it is. But anyhow, Bigfoot, as far as I'm aware, Bigfoot rarely builds a city full of human dwelling places. So I mean, they have like fortresses and stuff made out of like logs and things way up in the woods and the mountains that have been found by people like another controversial name. Robert Kreider from Kreider Explorations. He has found at least one fortress made of logs that could have been built by nothing else. So let's keep rolling. Only been going for about a half an hour, and we should hopefully be winding up in about another hour. So we shall see. All right. Dr. Doug Potter. He's a guy who is a Christian. I think he's a professor of some caliber, and he does a lot of research into like UFO things and such. Which this is one thing with Christians a lot of the time, and people that are Christians that look into the UFO phenomenon. They look so far and then no farther. they don't seem to really progress into the UFO phenomenon very far at all. They get in there enough to talk about cherubims and Nephilim and stargates and things like that, and that's pretty much it. They don't talk about the idea of ultra-terrestrials very much, even though what they say is based on the idea of ultra-terrestrials. That's, I think, Keel, came up with that term, I believe. It's an interesting topic, and we'll have to talk about it at some other point. But basically, that UFOs are not from another planet. They're from like another dimension. I believe, is it dimension? Either dimension, or they like live with us, but they're like, not part of us really. So it's an interesting idea that I need to explore farther. Excuse me. All right. So Doug Potter and Mike Hoggard, I will say I am not this familiar with Dr. Potter. I'm not. I am very familiar with Mike Hoggard, and I've heard Mike Hoggard talk about abduction scenarios a little bit. Maybe a little bit. But when it comes to the abduction stuff, everything is so bizarre, it's crazy. And we want to assume that everything associated with it is demonic. It's a comfortable spot to be. I think that some of it is. I think that a lot of it probably is. But when you have a situation like Stardust Ranch, where the guy is literally chopping the heads off of these things, and he said, if you don't chop off the head, they just disappear. If you chop off the head of the alien or what have you, usually the shorter ones is what he was having issues with. And if you do that, apparently you get to keep the whole package, according to him. And he has sent different specimens in for testing different places. And it's been a very interesting story with the guy from Stardust Ranch. But anyways, that's a UFO sideline. So Doug Potter says that if you acknowledge, and he is very skeptical about the Bigfoot phenomenon because the Patterson and Gimlin film doesn't add up to him. That is supposed to be the big proof of Bigfoot. And apparently no other testimony, no other... He does, in his talk that he has on a theology YouTube channel. I think I already have it in my Bigfoot playlist that I'll be sharing on the website part. That's where the evidence stops, is with that film. If that film doesn't pan out, he's very skeptical about Bigfoot. And it's just like, there's so much evidence and proof outside of footprints, dude, and videotapes. Even just the eyewitness testimony of thousands of people. And he does say that he leans toward the skeptical side, but he's not a complete skeptic. So he says that if you acknowledge that Bigfoot has capabilities greater than an animal. So what he's saying is, if Bigfoot can talk, think, read, write, translate, sing, laugh, cry. If he's saying that if you ascribe any of these characteristics that are more human to a Bigfoot, then you are on a dangerous path toward occultism. I would hesitate to agree with that, but I see where he's coming from, and I think he's pretty much right. Okay, so let me explain. Bigfoot is like cocaine. It's a drug that gets you started and makes you want more drugs. So Bigfoot gets you started. And then you want to look at the UFO stuff. Then you want to look at the Mothman prophecies. Then you want to look at the Flatwoods monster, or Flatwoods, I believe is the name. Flatwoods monster. And you want to look at, Spring Hill Jack, and you want to look at the giant of Gandahar. Gandahar, I'm pretty sure is the pronunciation. Just it gets you started into all this other stuff because just the idea of Bigfoot is fascinating. For some reason, it just is. Not even this idea about it being paranormal and stuff. The reason why, here's where the can of worms pops open. The reason why Bigfoot being able to talk is such a big pain and big problem and scary is because how does that fit into a Christian worldview? Does it fit in? Now, Answers in Genesis, Mike Hoggard, different people like this, they want more so for Bigfoot to be a remnant of what do they call them? Archival? No. Basically, a primitive species. Having it be a Gigantopithecus, some kind of ape that simply can walk like a human, which there's no evidence, I don't believe, that Gigantopithecus could walk like a human. To my knowledge, the only remains that we have of Gigantopithecus are part of a jaw and some teeth, which seems to be what we have for all of the cavemen as well, so you know how accurate that's probably going to end up being. And I think that a lot of the cavemen actually that have been found are not just a man or a monkey, as you will hear from like Bones of Contention. I think Jack Kawazo would talk about that kind of stuff. Ken Ham, Kent Hovind, all these different people. I think that some of these skeletons may actually be a part of the Bigfoot, the Bigfoot spectrum. And then some fossils that are found that are either supposed to be giant or giant sloth or what have you, either sometimes they are actually a giant human or they could sometimes also be a Bigfoot, in my opinion. So, what if Bigfoot can talk? If Bigfoot can talk, where does he fit into a biblical worldview? Is he going to fit into a mainstream biblical worldview where you have God creating everything that's alive, nothing to see here, nothing weird, and then it all just continues to now? Where would Bigfoot fit into that? It would. Bigfoot does not fit nicely into Bible stories for kids. It doesn't. So people try to explain Bigfoot with Cain. We've already talked about that a little bit. And it just doesn't make any sense. Anyways. And why would God just simply curse Cain with being hairy? And then all of the other stuff associated with Bigfoot too. It's so different from being human. And then there being multiple ones. And then Patty even being female. How on earth? I mean, really? How do they expect us to keep thinking that it could be Cain? Anyhow. So Esau is another candidate. If Esau was a Bigfoot, then Bigfoot has the capability to be able to speak. The argument is that Esau was born with hair all over his body, red and thick and hairy like a garment. And of course, Rebecca, I believe it's Rebecca, ties or has Jacob tie goat skin to his arms. So his arms feel like Esau's hairy arms. So I could see where you would do that. Goat skin, goat hair is not terribly thick. And I believe he also used like a kid. And a kid, I think, is going to be classified as like a goat that's like a year old or younger. So it's not incredibly thick hair. A lot of the time, it's pretty coarse hair. So it's not like, I mean, your forearms and your neck are very hairy spots, and those are the parts that are mentioned. Either because those were the hairy parts of Esau, like they would be on most people. Like my forearms are pretty hairy. If Jacob was more fair-haired, then or didn't have as much hair on his skin and stuff. Hi there. Hello. Somebody's joined us. Yes, Nephilim. That's right. Yes, glad to see him here tonight too. And I do see a second viewer. Hey, if you want to leave a comment, let me know who is here. That would be awesome. I'm glad you're able to join us. So, with Esau being touched on probably the neck and his forearms by his father, like we see in the Bible story, he's like kneeling down or whatever, and he's like holding his forearms or like blessing him with his hands on his neck and stuff like this. And remember, he was more convinced by the smell of the field on Esau. And when you're outside a lot, sometimes you start to smell like the outdoors. When people smell Bigfoot, they say they smell death. It is the most putrid, awful smell ever. It's like a mix of rotten food and dead animal and BO and vomit and everything mixed together. Now, that's not true of all Bigfoots. Big feet. Bigfootses. There are some that take better care of themselves than others, apparently, according to Robin. Some do a very good job. Others don't. So, if you're smelling a really awful smell, it could be one of the ones that does not take good care of itself. And it might also be a sign of aggression, possibly. And also a lack of hygiene. So, hygiene, a lack of using a Bigfoot shampoo. Do Bigfoots use shampoo all over their bodies? That'd be a good question of the day. Does Bigfoot use shampoo everywhere? Likely, I would say. So then, with the idea of Esau being a Bigfoot, how does this make sense? How does it not make sense? Okay, so the only way that I've ever heard it made sense is that he was hairy all over the place. He might have had hypertrichosis. Let me see if I can get an image really quick of hypertrichosis. I believe it's called also Wolfman disease or something. All right, so we're going to look at a little bit of hypertrichosis here. It basically leaves hair all over your body. Which this is something too. Because there's a confessional episode that came out just recently, which is a member episode. And it's number 656. And it's about, you can stay down, sir. And it's about, that's not an invitation. There's somebody else who's hairy all over like a garment. Carl the conspiracy cat. Silly boy. Okay. So hypertrichosis has hair all over your body. And apparently what happens is when you're in the womb, you actually have hair all over your body. Probably not a lot of it, but, hair nonetheless. And then at a certain point, the mother's body puts out a hormone or what have you that actually has this hair fall out or get digested or what have you. And it basically goes away. And you have fine hairs when you're born, but apparently not to the same degree. Carl, you're going to go outside if you're going to be disruptive. I am sorry. I am sorry. Yeah. But you go stay down. So let me get hypertrichosis up here. We're going to remove that, and we're going to... Carl, you're crazed. All right, and we're going to share a screen right here. So the guy on Tony Merkel's show, The Confessionals, said that the technical term for what Esau had was hypertrichosis. And then he also says that being covered all over with hair sounds kind of squatchy to him. And I'm just like, well, hang on a second. You just, okay, being a Sasquatch and being a person with just hair all over your body, there's a big difference. So let's look at some unfortunate people that apparently never had that signal from their mother's body, and the hair just stayed. There's probably other, there's like genetic things, I'm sure, as well. So let's get this up here. Sweet. Okay. So we've got this guy right here. It looks like he might be from the Middle East, possibly, from the looks of him. It's hard to tell, especially because he's covered with hair. So there's that guy. There's a little breakdown. And causes and different things. And I mean, that looks kind of Bigfoot-y, and it's also called Wolfman syndrome, so they throw the wolf in there. A werewolf gene, they call it sometimes. You just have hair all over your body, so it's kind of like the guy from, Werewolf of London or whatever. Quite hairy individuals. So that would, I guess, be a bearded lady, but the beard is even coming up her nose and all this. Here's another person. Hair everywhere. There's another lady that's just absolutely covered with hair. Oh. There we go. Another kid. So yeah, it's definitely a thing. And you get hairy, okay? So that's the idea. It's possible that this is something that could have been Esau's issue. It's possible. But I would not want to say that I would not want to say that Esau was 8 to 12 feet tall, could pull trees up by their roots and twist them in half. Walked differently from a human being, had a second Nephilim or incubus father or something like this, and it yielded this monster pregnancy. Because remember, in order to do that, Sarah would have had Sarah. Is it Sarah? Rebecca? Here's Rebecca. Sorry. I get my Bible females confused a lot. I get my patriarchs flip-flopped all the time, half the time, quarter of the time, most of the time. So where was I going with that? All right, so they would have had to have been conceived around the same time by two different individuals and been pregnant at the same time, and they were struggling together in her womb. I'm sorry, but a baby Bigfoot is going to have it over a baby human physically any day of the week. Why was Jacob even born if he was actually a Bigfoot? And what would he be doing going out and hunting with bows and arrows and swords and spears and what have you? And I believe it was also him that killed Nimrod, Esau. Some other people say Shem. I'm pretty sure it was Esau. Why? Why would he? And he had flocks and herds and servants and all sorts of things. And he refers to Isaac as his father. And he is deserving of the birthright. And the elder shall serve the younger. Okay, so is Bigfoot serving us somehow? No. Oh yeah, and by the way, for the people that want to say that Esau was a Bigfoot, that like Bigfoot and know Bigfoot and talk to Bigfoot, remember what it says? I'm pretty sure it's in Malachi, where it says, Jacob have I loved, but Esau have I hated. I can't speak for God, but I mean, I don't think that God hates all of the Bigfoots. I mean, they were born of I feel they were born of a union that never should have happened. But like even in the book of Enoch, God will have mercy on things that, like even the giants. He had mercy. He extended mercy to the giants, and apparently some of them did repent. Some of them did turn from the evil practices that they were involved with. This circles right back around to Doug Potter. Doug Potter says that if there's anything that you can ascribe to Bigfoot that is greater than an animal, then you're on a slippery slope toward occultism. I would partially agree. I see where he's coming from, but I think that you have to acknowledge. I think you have to. Based on the evidence that I've seen, especially the stuff from Dave Paulides and all the people that have contact with these things, it seems to me like you have to acknowledge that Bigfoot can talk, can think, can cry, can sing, can laugh, can joke, can complain, can rebel, all these different things. All of that indicates that there's something else going on than just the basic creation myth. And when I say myth, when anybody says the word myth, what we think today is we think, oh, fable, fairy tale didn't happen. From what I've heard, and I would love to have confirmation on this, is that the word myth does not mean something that happened that happened in an imaginary world. Myth apparently is supposed to extend to a further definition of something that happened before the time of men, which would be like a prehistory kind of thing. So that being said, any creation story even a true creation story like the one in the Bible is going to be classified as a creation myth. So like the mythos surrounding just the truth of history and how things came to be. That's something that we couldn't personally eyewitness, is what my understanding is. If you have a different understanding of the word myth, please leave it down in the comments. I am interested to hear it, for sure. So, let's keep going. With Bigfoot. When asked what Bigfoot is, he's asked, what is Bigfoot? And he says that he tends to the skeptical side, and then it's a phenomenon. And it's just like, okay, then you have absolutely no idea. And you don't have a good explanation for it either. So you're telling us that we can't ascribe something to a Bigfoot that is more, not more than human, more than animal, without being on the slippery slope of possibly becoming an occultist and stuff like this. It's like, well, let me explain. If Bigfoot, like Robin McRae, refer to her a few times tonight, she has a Bigfoot friend that she claims, and he is apparently a white-haired Bigfoot named Shadow, ironically. And she asked him one time, they're pretty good friends. She's like, "What are you? How did you come into being? You know, what is a Bigfoot? How did two big monkeys get together and then you guys popped out, or did a hairy human run out in the woods, or what happened?" And he said, "We are human like you and star people." So that tells me that they could be a fusion between the fallen angelic realm and human, and possibly a little bit of ape mixed in there as well. According to them, apparently, also the dog man, which people report, not necessarily the werewolf, but the dog man, is supposed to be a hybrid between human, angel, and dog or wolf. So these different things kind of stack together. So that's the basic explanation. And I'm so sorry that somebody was had to cut out. Hopefully Daniel is doing okay. So anyways, glad you guys could tune in. So that's the basic idea. So let's see, and we're going to be talking a little bit about what people tend to think about the idea of hybrids and such, especially referring to the beliefs of King James. Now, I think that this would be a good time to mention that Mike Hoggard has a good breakdown about Bigfoot and such that he did several years ago on the word satyr. So in the Bible, we have satyrs being mentioned a couple of times, and that the satyr will dwell in desolate places, places that God destroys because of their wickedness, particularly Israel, Babylon, places like this. And the satyr will cry to his fellow, and the satyrs shall dance there, and things like that. So it was translated from a Hebrew word that means hairy, as in Esau's hands. Esau's hands were satyr. And in the context, it can be a hairy goat or a hairy demon. I believe that might be closely associated with some Indian words for Bigfoot, actually, now that I'm thinking of it. Where do I have a list. Oh, you're back. Hi, thank you. I have a list somewhere in this book. There we go. Of words Indian names for Sasquatch. Okay, so this is on page 245 of True Legends by Steve Quayle. You guys can find a link for that in our library. And a few different names for them. I'm pretty sure that Sasquatch means wild man or hairy man or something like this. So there's the name, there's the tribe, and then there's the translation. Oh, I can't even pronounce that. So there's a few different things. And there's some things that I don't think really line up particularly. There's one weakness I see in Quayle's work is that he does not see a difference between different types of Bigfoots. So that's one problem. And also he doesn't see other cryptids besides just Bigfoot. So give me 1 second and I will explain. And I think that there isn't any danger in acknowledging the fact or the idea that Bigfoot is a hybrid between a fallen angel, a human, and ape or such. The danger is that since they have this fallen angel part to them, that if they have these kind of paranormal type of abilities, then humans will either go to them to get these same abilities or seek after these abilities because they see them doing them, or different other things that are associated with Hollow Earth and what other things you might have. And when you inquire into Hollow Earth stuff, you just automatically get into like the Kabbalah and just different systems like that. Crazy stuff. So that's the danger, is that it's so often associated with those kind of things, because you can be scientific and say that it's some sort of ape that we missed or something, but it still doesn't make a lot of sense. It doesn't add up to a whole bunch of accounts and all these other kind of things. And the people that are wanting to, look into all those kind of things are not generally scientists. They're like, people that are open-minded and aren't just looking for the logical explanation, and also aren't interested in censorship. So a lot of the time, the things that are censored are sometimes the dangerous things. So there is a danger when it comes to looking into Bigfoot. There's a danger when it comes to looking for Bigfoot too, obviously. Give me one moment. Is this... All right, I'm back. So Mike Hoggard says, I'll get back to Quayle in a second. He makes an argument for the man-goat not existing like, we would typically think. Man, top half, goat, bottom half. Says it doesn't make sense because that's not how genes mix. I personally think that they could exist that way, personally. And also I think it was, who was it? Herodotus, I believe, that said that he saw a centaur preserved in honey, basically mummified in honey, and that its top half was human and its bottom half was horse. It doesn't have to be a fusion, sexually between a man and a horse or what have you, but it would make more sense for it to be a monstrosity that was either artificially created or created through some other interesting means. So, and there's centaurs throughout history, mythology, and just everywhere. So there's some really interesting looking ones, like in Ireland and Irish folklore. Oh boy. Just, anyways, crazy, crazy, crazy stuff. And Hoggart also, he says that it could be a fusion between a man and a goat demon. But what you would see more so there is you would see a hairy giant. So I'm like, oh, okay, so this is where he gets Bigfoot from. And the satyr shall cry to his fellow. And that's the thing about Bigfoots too, is that they communicate with like howls and whoops and stuff like this, and extremely loud. Satyrus means beast with human qualities, according to Carolus Linnaeus. Mike Hoggart brings that up. Esau's hairiness could be attributed to hypertrichosis, like we mentioned earlier. And a beast with human-like qualities, like I think it's the technical name for the common chimp. It's Satyrus something, Chimpanzeus and Satyrus, or I forget what it is. But it basically means, man, animal kind of thing. And Mothman and, walk skinners, okay. It's night. I've got a window right here. I'm sorry. Not saying it right. Little superstitious. Hey, I've heard stories. I've heard too many stories. Wikipedia. Chimpanzee Satyrus, a wild man, is equivalent to a satyr. So go ahead and look up wild man on Wikipedia. We'll be providing that article someday when we write that Bigfoot page for the Bible version conspiracy. And feel free to look up Bigfoot on Wikipedia. Now I think... Hi, it's me. It's Daniel Jones. Yes, that's right. Hi, Daniel. How you doing? I'm sorry, my voice and my words. It's been a long week, and I have to work tomorrow too. Tomorrow's going to be my last day. I think, at my current employment. So let's go to playlists. Oy, I am tired. Bigfoot. And we're going to go to the playlist. Oh. Not seeing exactly what I wanted. No, not seeing what I wanted. So, there's actually a video by a lady named Kat Hansen, who, has been mentioned before on this channel, is into things like the Kabbalah and knows how to open and close portals to other dimensions and such like this. And what she does is she goes on World Bigfoot Radio, and she talks a lot about the missing 411 and explanations as to what is going on. She blames it on a race of beings that we would probably think of as being fallen angels. They are called the Fae and are closely associated with fairies. So anyhow, she goes on to World Bigfoot Radio and starts teaching some basic words in Bigfoot. So that is a very interesting study. Ooh, excuse me. And yeah, I will provide a link to that as well on our eventual Bigfoot page, which will hopefully be coming soon to a laptop or a cell phone near you. I've already mentioned the magical garment of Esau, which is episode 656. I'll put a link to it below. I think I already did. And Prometheus Lens podcast is interviewing with Tony Merkel, and he thinks that Esau could have been a Bigfoot. Then he says that it was probably hypertrichosis, and he says that being covered with hair sounds pretty squatchy to him. That's the term. And probably the biggest thing where I'm just like, no, I'm sorry, is he claims that the serpent in the Garden of Eden was really a divine being in the form of a man who practiced divination. And he sees a connection between the Hebrew word used for the garment of Adam and Eve, the apron, and the priest garments, and a connection between the priesthood of Adam and Aaron in the rabbi tradition. And that's true. I'm sure that there is a connection between the clothing, and also the human wearing the clothing and the human wearing the clothing. It would make sense. And being able to talk with God like Adam could, and the priest being connected in that regard, that would kind of make sense too, to have a connection there. But I think that the problem with the Prometheus Lens guy is that he doesn't acknowledge that Hebrew has a very, very limited vocabulary. I don't know a lot about Hebrew, but I worked with a Jew for at least a year, about a year probably. He was from Tel Aviv, and he knew like 7 languages. And he came over, and it was a very energetic guy, just ready to fight about everything. It was great. He was a nice guy. His name was Raphael. Loved working with him. I'd love to do it again. But I don't know where he is now. I hope he's okay. So he was like, when I got to America, I was taking these classes, and one of the classes I had to take was vocabulary, and I had never heard of vocabulary. What is this class, vocabulary? And I found out that in English you have all of these words for exactly the same thing. Why do you do that? Hebrew is so simple. We have a word for a thing, and that's what it is. And you don't need 10 words to just say the same word. Just why not just have one? So it's just like, well, if you're wearing a garment, dude, on Adam, and you're wearing a garment on a priest, oh, there's a connection between the English words too. A garment and a garment. But it's also, apron. And he also doesn't get that there's so many Hebrew words that are translated in many more English words. It's just, I can't wait to get all the way through that episode and just really break it down. But suffice it to say, for that, it's just like the Prometheus Lens guy seems to get into a lot of different things, and I think we would be in agreement on a lot of things, which would be really cool. But he's off. I think he's very off on several points. And the thing with the serpent too. Oh, serpent, Nakash or whatever. That also means diviner and stuff. So I'm just like, okay, that makes sense. Like, with the serpents that were driven out of Ireland, those being the druids. So yeah, the druids, diviners. Yeah, this jives. It makes sense. It checks out. But if you're going to say that the serpent in the Garden of Eden was actually a dude, okay, so this dude, let's think about this for a second. This dude, this diviner dude, tempted Eve, got her to eat of the fruit, was cursed by God to crawl on his belly, and he was more subtle than any beast of the field. Why not more subtle than any man? Especially if there was more people there than Adam and Eve, like so many like to say in the old Earth stuff. He's crawling on his belly. What? Was the guy crawling on his belly the rest of his life? Dust shall be the serpent's. Okay, so he was. It makes no sense. Makes no sense at all. No sense. So it doesn't check out with the Bible. It's a nice little theory, though. And like I said, can't wait to finish the interview. It'll be an interesting listen, I am sure. So let's see. I want to get into the demonology real quick. I want to read the Bigfoot names too. And I'm sorry, I don't remember any of the Bigfoot words that I learned. Okay, so the Nalem and Tillamook Indians call the Bigfoot the Wild Man. And it's just a huge list. Okay, so 245. I'm not going to try to pronounce all of the Indian names. I can pronounce some of them. So one calls them Sasquatch. No translation. Apparently the translation is Sasquatch. Okay. Wild Man of the Woods, Wild Woman, Tall Burnt Hair, Stick Indian. Kat Hansen said that Stick Indian, to her, in her Indian language, Stick Indians were the enormous Bigfoots, like the ones that could step on a 10-foot tall or 8-foot tall Bigfoot's noggin and squash it. Stick Indians apparently are very rare, but they're huge. And there are very, very, very few of them. They will adopt a Bigfoot out of the Bigfoot clans and raise it as their own to be, the higher Bigfoot. And apparently they're very much like a district manager, and they will, keep peace within the clans of Bigfoots or tribes or troops or whatever you want to call them. Night people, a spirit hidden in the woods, and a spirit a lot of the time means just something that comes and goes and disappears. Not necessarily a ghost. Oh, let's see. The one who runs and hides, wild Indians, not wild monkeys, not wild beasts in this case. The spirit spear, the five brothers, the evil god of the woods, the boss of the woods. The Chinook Indians call him the evil god of the woods. But are they talking about Bigfoot per se? Like I said, there's different kinds. So, wild man of the woods, wild woman of the woods, owl woman monster. I don't think that's referring to Bigfoot, because I've heard about the owl woman as well. She's apparently not very nice, especially to men. Owl woman as well, the wicked cannibal, is what the eastern Athabasca Indians, the name is Wendigo. And I don't think that that's exactly a Bigfoot. I've heard, according to the Duke classification system from World Bigfoot Radio, I believe a Wendigo is what he calls a Type 4 Bigfoot, which are extremely rarely sighted, or at least reported. Big Elder Brother, the Woodman, the Otter Man, which is also something completely different, apparently from Bigfoot. Big Man with Little Hat, the Bushman, the Stonish Giant, Stone Giants, Stone Coats, which the reason they're called Stone Coats is because they will actually put like mud and stuff in their hair, and it makes it kind of an armor, and when it dries out. Bad Luck or Disaster, Cannibal Giant, the Big Person, the Cannibal Demon, which again I think is something completely different. Bushman, Giant, Stone Man, Stone Coats, same idea. Hairy Savage, Tall Man, the Mask Being, Living Solid Face, the Gamekeeper, the Giant, the Frightener, the Giants, Giants, Dangerous Being, Devil of the Forest, the Unknown, the Bushman, the Trickster, the Big God. That's what the Navajo call him. Plains Indians call him the Trickster. So yeah, lots of different things. Trickster kind of reminds me of the god Loki from The Mask. We just heard it was called the Mask Being by the Lenni Lenape Indian. And Loki was a giant that was adopted by Odin. Huh, interesting. So yeah, we got through that. Now I'm going to check the comments really quick because I saw there was a couple of those. Be back in just a bit, having to turn sound down. Okay. All right, good. Glad Daniel's doing well. Alrighty then, let's go to the... No, not that. We don't need to see all the hairy people again. We're going to stop the screen share, and we're going to present the Demonology of King James. Now, what I thought was interesting, I went through the Demonology for the first time a few days ago. And just so you guys know, in case you guys don't have the links, we have a little spot in our Google Drive where we put different articles or different, documents and such like this, images or what have you. We put them in this folder for our co-conspirators so they can have access to certain things. And if you're not a co-conspirator and that interests you, hey, check out the description. You can join down there, $7 a month, not bad. Just saying. So in the folder, members, you guys will find a copy of the Demonology of King James. I believe it's by Tyson. So it's going, if I remember correctly, it has the modern version of it first, and then the second one, it actually has like the original spelling and everything, which is crazy sometimes. So if you want to check that out, you're welcome. And it's in PDF format, so it'll be easy to read on your devices and also to print. So let's go back to the Demonology of King James. I searched the term monster this evening. So from the introduction on page 36, another type of following spirit is treated, those called incubi or succubi, who have sex with men or with women or men. Philomaths wants to, or sorry, Oh, how did they pronounce his name again? I forget. Philomethes, I believe, wants to know if they exist, if there's any difference of sex among spirits. Epistemon replies that this sort of spirit operates either by stealing the sperm of a dead man and injecting it into a woman, which caused many nuns to be burnt, or else by animating a corpse. So that's like the only way that King James, which is basically the character of Epistemon, and Philomethes is his sounding board. It's in the form of a dialogue. So Epistemon replies that this sort of spirit operates either by stealing the sperm of a dead man, blah, 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 blah. Either way, the sperm used by the devil is always icy cold. Epistemon denies that spirits have any inherent sexual differentiation, since the division of the sexes is confined to living things. Don't know about that. Don't know about that. Epistemon denies this, okay? Since the... okay. Or that such spirits can engender monsters, so he does not promote that idea either. Which is one of the things that stuck me as a younger Christian. I was like, okay, so how is Casper the Friendly Ghost supposed to give birth? It doesn't make any sense, because he's got, like, you touch him and you go right through him and stuff like this. Well, that's not exactly how you should think about paranormal entities, I don't believe. The seed of a dead man cannot impregnate being also dead, and if the seed of a living man is stolen or used, overlooking for the moment the fact that it would cool down and become infertile in transit, the child engendered will be normal, since the seed is normal. However, the devil can make a woman who is not pregnant get a swollen belly and appear to be pregnant, and on such occasions, the midwife may pretend that she has given birth to something monstrous. So there's been some cases of different kinds of monsters and stuff like this being born. First Enoch talks about it, I believe. And I think Steve Quayle mentions it as well in Little Creatures. So this is the actual dialogue, pages 272. And I believe this one as well, 36 we just looked at. Note 16. And then this is where the original spelling comes in. So like sundry. And self. Things like that. Working. So let's go back up. Philomethes. How is it then that they say various monsters have been begotten by that way? Epistemon. These tales are nothing but annales fabulae. So, like, basically fables, I believe, is how that is understood. For that they have no semen of their own. I have shown you already. Oh, shown how? What? Oh, okay. So God had Mary become pregnant. How? Something supernatural. I don't. So it's like, okay, so God can just go or whatever, and Mary's pregnant. So does a demon need semen? That's the question. And that the cold, semen of a dead body can work nothing in generation. It is more than plain, and being already dead in itself, as well as the rest of the body, is wanting the natural heat and such other natural operations as are necessary for working that effect. And in case such a thing were possible, which were all utterly against all rules of nature, it would breed no monster, but only such a natural offspring as would have come between that man or woman and that other abused person. In case they both being alive had had ado with each other. For the devil's part therein is but the naked carrying or expelling of that substance, and so it could not participate with it could not participate with no quality of the same. I guess no quality of the devil, I'm assuming. Indeed, it is possible to the craft of the devil to make a woman's belly to swell after he hath that way abused her, which he may do either by stirring up her own humor or by herbs, as we see beggars daily do. I'm assuming some kind of drug use, I'm not sure. And when the time of her delivery should come, to make her labor with great anguish, like unto that natural course, and then subtly to slip into the midwife's hands sticks, stones, or some monstrous child brought from some other place. But this is more reported and guessed at by others than believed by me. So this doesn't seem to have any reference really to any kind of older writing, because I believe he does mention like the idea of homunculi, where like an alchemist creates a small living being, which is supposed to be like the origin of fairies or little people or such like. And when you have that, James is referring to books that are older that not a lot of people have, especially today, have read, and not a lot of people back then even did a lot of research and stuff like this. And when it comes to that kind of statement, which we just saw about the incubus and the succubus, it doesn't seem to actually be a reference to anything more authoritative than his own opinion, which kind of sucks. So let's get into what else we got to get into. I've been finding some interesting things in the demonology, that's for sure. One very interesting one that, if tomorrow's live stream pans out, I'm hoping to do that at 8 o'clock tomorrow night, possibly. We're going to talk about a little bit then. King James mentions Lucifer and how it should be translated or understood. And I would love to know why Gail didn't talk about this. I would love to know, and we'll do a future episode about this, why and what role, why don't we talk about the role that King James played in the witch trials? King James defenders and people like this don't talk about it a lot. Mention it in passing sometimes. But I think it's pretty important. And we'll get into it at some point in the future. When I'm not plumb exhausted and it's not 12 o'clock And this video hasn't already been running for 2 hours and 7 minutes. So I'm hoping you guys got a little bit of value out of tonight's video. If you watched this entire video, what on earth are you doing with your life? Subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed, so you can see more of this kind of stuff. Makes it easy for you. Not, what on earth are you doing with your life? Why are you watching this stupid nonsense on YouTube? Not that. It's not what I mean to say. I mean to say, if you're watching all the way through this and you're not subscribed, what are you thinking? Just hit that little button. Hit that button. Hit it, I say. Push the button. On page 247, I heard something about this too, about the Mount St. Helens cleanup, unearthing a few Bigfoot cadavers. That was an interesting idea. And I've heard probably of 4 or 5 different Bigfoots that have been killed. And one that was buried by a farmer probably about a century ago. I don't know where it is. Tony Merkel's onto it, or he was onto it. We'll have to see how that pans out. So, but for now, unless there's something else crucial, we'll talk more about the Bigfoot idea in the future. But for now, nature's calling me. I got to get out of here. Until next time, read your Bible like the devil's after it, because there truly is a Bible version conspiracy, and we're in the middle of it. God bless. And we'll talk to you co-conspirators in a moment, if you're up to it, for the live after show chat. God bless.